Oh boy, hello everybody. Welcome to another video. Today we are in the special archives of the Dermot Priory, the special collections. This is insane. I should have talked about in a previous video, if you've been watching, about how much I have enjoyed this patch because of its references to elsewhere in the Guild Wars universe. It's like the writers, like the guys in charge of the living world, have suddenly remembered what their universe was. Like they've suddenly remembered all the old storylines and the true things that we've all fallen in love with in the past, right? And when I make a comment like that, when I say that, I'm not even necessarily including the fabulousness that is this place. This mission is incredible. This whole area is phenomenal, and it has so much lore, so much story that I have to show it to you guys. And there won't be any specific spoilers in this to do with the story whatsoever. Now, trust me, I take the story very, very seriously, and I can say with very high confidence that there's no actual plot spoilers for what's coming up in the living world here, especially if you've seen the trailer or followed any of my speculations from earlier in the week about what's happening here. However, we can dive into some phenomenal stuff that had me pissing my pants with excitement as I was playing this before. So, I'm going to do a tour, and as we do this tour, hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a deeper insight into the kind of stories and characters we're learning about here, for those of you who didn't play Guild Wars 1, because there is so much reference to that game and those characters here that it's unbelievable. So, yeah, where are we, first of all? I guess we're in the Dermot Priory basement, the special collections. The first amazing thing you'll see here straight away is a statue of Abaddon. This is an old fallen god. Why is this statue here? I guess the Dermot Priory just collected one for themselves at some point. I don't believe it's the same one that was in the Temple of the Forgotten God during the Guild Wars 2 personal story. It looks like it's in great condition, and it's incredibly intimidating, as you can see. Above it, we do have this alchemy circle on the ceiling. The patch doesn't really go that much more into it, however we do get a very good angle on the text up here. I believe it says something along the lines of, beware the power of secrets kept. Beware the power of secrets kept. That word might not be power, it might be something else. Interesting thought though, a very ominous message to be on the ceiling up there. And maybe we'll talk about that soon enough, because there will be many stories and books about Abaddon. So what's the deal with this place? It's, if you guys might remember from a previous Living World patch, they talked about how the Dermot Priory have slowly been collecting information and magical artifacts as best they can from around Tyria. Well, this is where they've been storing them. And it's not just books we'll be reading here in this immense library, though it is largely books. There'll be stuff to do with artifacts and paintings and all kinds of things we can inspect. You'll notice lining this area of the room already are a bunch of tomes. These can be translated, but they're actually the same as tomes we see upstairs, these like slates, upstairs in regular Dermot Priory, floating around that big magical thing. One of them's called The Rise of the Elder Dragons, for example. They just give you basic stories about what's going on in the Guild Wars universe at the moment. So let's head on up now. There is a plaque in front of the Abaddon statue here, and it reads, Abaddon, Lord of the Everlasting Depths, Keeper of Secrets, open mine eyes and bestow upon me the knowledge of the Abyss. From the scriptures of Abaddon, giver of magic. This is a story we actually read in the previous game when you could read the scriptures of the different gods. I believe that quote specifically is a quote from a man called Jadoth, Lord Jadoth, who was the very first ever Margonite, the very first of a huge faction of humans who followed this god Abaddon even as he went to war with the other gods. They believed in Abaddon giving them magic so fiercely that they followed him, and they were his chosen, and he gave them magic and ultimately made them look a lot like the Branded. Joining us on this little excursion. It's so good. I've got like a cup of tea with me here, guys. I've got like a coconut pastry thing from Greg's. Oh, we're really going to settle into this. But joining us are Casimir Mead and Marjorie Delacroix. They actually have nothing to say. I was so hyped and pumped when I first came in here, but you can't even share that with them. They don't seem to have too much to say. And now we move into the collections proper. And first of all, you'll notice on the roof in here is a very interesting mark. We'll talk about this more in a bit, but as you guys might have realized from previous speculation videos, stuff in the community, this is actually seems to be very similar to the Eternal Alchemy, right? It places Tyria in the middle. It's got these 6 orbs around it. Each one of them is actually marked with a new Crichton character referencing one of the Elder Dragons. So this is the first letter of every Elder Dragon's name. And this last one here, this is the Deep Sea Dragon, and that actually starts with an S. There'll actually be NPCs here who talk further about this, and even a book that references exactly what this is that we're looking at, which is fascinating. And also hanging in the room is a giant tendril of some kind, as it would look. Now this, many of us were speculating, because Abaddon was in the trailer, that this could be like a Nightfallen tendril or something that we saw. Well, in fact, it's not that. It looks a lot instead, doesn't it, like Zaitan's tail. And in fact, we will get confirmation of that soon, later on in the library, as we talk to different people. The Dermot Priory scavenged this damn thing, so Zaitan's tail is now here. Phenomenal stuff. I guess this is kind of puts a nail in the coffin of the idea that Zaitan's still alive, right? That they've recovered this. And in fact, it moves into this lab over here. There are still some areas of the special collections, despite all the immense lore we're about to get and insane references. There are some areas we still can't go. There's this room with all this mechanical stuff in there. There seem to be some Scarlet holograms maybe in there as well. Creepy looking things, and all these cables and stuff actually connected to the tail over there. Well, this is actually marked here by a sign. The sign says autopsy lab, do not enter. So they have an autopsy lab and they're working on Zaitan. Isn't that crazy? So yeah, there's that area back there we can't really go very far in, but fun enough. And as we go around, you'll notice there's all these various sections with all different stuff we can interact with. Now the story itself wants us to come into this area with all the big crates. They have like live contents and stuff in them, and speak to that archivist over there. We're not going to do that in this video. As I say, this isn't actually about the story. This is just the library and all the insane stuff you can do. I must have spent about 4 hours, I would say, in total in this one room. This is why this patch is like, if you enjoy story, it takes ages to complete, but if you don't, you can just whiz through it. But what we're going to do is, we got kind of this nice circular formation of the library we can go through. I think I'm going to go counterclockwise around it, and we're just going to explore and see what we have to find and to read about, which should be fascinating. So let's speak to this Magister first.
Huh? Oh, it's you. Oh, shh.
So don't be like me, guys. We're in a library. You're not meant to be like me, though. You're not meant to be really loud and excited and enthusiastic about things. You have to be quiet. We're in a library, and you find that constantly here. There's some Char in there, or Norn, who hates people talking, and whenever you talk to an NPC, he's like, keep it down. Look, so this person over here, for example.
I've spent decades here, and I discover something new every day. Quiet. Sorry.
It's so good. Reminds you of being in a library for real. But we'll deal with that. Some more people to talk to soon enough. Let's begin with this section here. This is one of the chunkier sections that we'll be doing, but has a whole bunch of different books around. And I guess what we'll do is we'll start here with the Primeval Kings book, Unearthing Ancient Elona. Alright, so the history by Baltec discusses the rulers of Elona from 200 BE to 452 AE. Baltec? Oh my god, Baltec has been referenced in this patch. Baltec is an enigma. He was this crazy, interesting, one-of-a-kind kind of character from back during Nightfall in Guild Wars 1, where he appeared to be this time-traveling crazy dude that made all these predictions about Eye of the North, the future campaign, and has generally been a really fascinating character that I've always wanted to see more about. And here we have a book that was written by him. Now, when we were playing in Nightfall, okay, this was just 250 years ago, Baltec here, who we met 250 years ago, is talking about kings from well over 1,000 years ago, okay? A long, almost 1,500 years ago, longer than that. So he's dealing with subject material here that was, in theory, long before his time. So we'll flip the page. The arduous task of unearthing what happened during the rule of the Primeval Kings is compounded by the devastation of the Scarab Plague at the end of their reign. Scarab Plague was a giant, mass extinction, basically, of people on that continent for a while. Flip page. The golden age of Elona was all but erased by the chaos that ensued when people succumbed to insects that eviscerated them. There were some really, really dark, terrifying stories about the Scarab Plague in the previous game, about how they would, burrow inside you as eggs and eat their way back out. An adept researcher can rediscover the truth about Elona's splendor during this period. A socio-economic divide can be seen in the architecture of devastated Farina. Copious servants were available to serve the royalty. Farina was the first city, one of the oldest cities of men you can ever reach in this entire franchise, older further than anything we've ever seen in Tyria. These royals had relics from as far away as Kryta and such strong archimetrical infusion that they ruled without opposition in 600 years. Interesting, so we don't get anything more on Baltec, but just the fact that he's got a book there shows that the devs haven't forgotten about him. There's a huge thing with this patch where it just feels like ArenaNet have rediscovered their universe, rediscovered their world, their lore, and It feels amazing to see this kind of stuff. This is a pretty fitting one to start with, I guess, actually. Let's do Kos on Kos. No massive lore bombs here. Kos on Kos is one of the ascended back pieces in the game. In fact, many of the books you find here are readable versions of these back pieces. Kos on Kos is obviously a joke. He was so vain, he wrote a book about himself. Kos was... In Guild Wars 1, you could get these characters called heroes that you would gear out with their own builds and their own equipment. It was a really substantive feature added to the game. These AI companions you could have join you on your adventures, and the very first of all of these was Kos. He was like your bro. He was your best friend. He was there from the start to the end of the Nightfall story. He was a vain warrior that was all around a generally fun character to look back on. And now we get to read Kos on Kos. This autobiography focuses mostly on the events surrounding the ascension of Cormyr in 1075 AE, also known as the events of Nightfall, right? This was the stuff we played in the first game. So we'll read on. I am Kos Djarin, and I gave up a lot for the Sun Spears. I lost promotions, a father, a sister, friends, and my home to fight for the organization. So, Djarin isn't a word we've heard for a while. Djarin was his second name, as this would suggest. There was actually a place called the Djarin Estate in the first game, and a bunch of optional side quests where you learn about how Kos's family lost all of their land, and you could enact on some quests to sort of deal with this. The Sun Spears were an ancient organization operating out of Istan and led by Cormyr. These were basically the people who went to war against another nation in an attempt to stop Abaddon from rising. Back during the Nightfall story, you had the Order of Whispers and sort of a counterpart organization of the Sun Spears. So you can almost think of them as being sort of on the same level as the Priory, as the Vigil, as the Order of Whispers and the Sun Spears too. But of course, because they are so Elona specific and we're interior in this game, we haven't really heard very much about them. But Kos was a Sun Spear, just as you, the player character, were a Sun Spear, just as Cormyr was a Sun Spear, and he says he lost a lot for the organization. He says, I became known as the Bane of Corsairs and Demons. I fought for my country and my Spear Marshal. Spear Marshal Cormyr, that is. Holy Goddess Lissa, who was his patron goddess, gave me Cormyr and Meloni. One of the two I married. Meloni was another of the heroes you met. You got to see there was a bit of a romance relationship going on. They actually went into sort of a romance story in the previous game. And yes, they ultimately got married. As I said many times before, I believe Nightfall was the height of Guild Wars franchise's storytelling, and they did include this. So the other he says that he prays to now. He married Meloni and he now prays to Cormyr. I love them both with all my being. I risked my life many times for Cormyr, but she got what every great warrior deserves. She died courageously. Interesting way to end the biography. I think what the devs are trying to subtly do there is everyone's like, oh, Cormyr had this great thing happen to her. She stole our godhood, right? Oh, she's so lame. She stole this from us. I think what they're trying to do with the book there is be like, well, no, what happened to Cormyr actually wasn't good. She killed herself in many respects. And this isn't something you should be jealous of, right? Or be unhappy that she stole from you, in theory. Okay, next book, let's look at the Tome of the Rubicon. Now, the Tome of the Rubicon is something big that's been big even in Guild Wars 2 as well. The dwarves, of course, were a race who turned themselves to stone at the end of the first game so that they could descend into the depths to fight Primordus and his minions, okay? Now, through this whole story was essentially a battle that the dwarves were calling the battle between the Great Dwarf and the Great Destroyer. The Great Destroyer being Primordus' chief of minions at that time. And when the dwarves turned themselves to stone, they almost say it's as though they became the Great Dwarf. Now, this whole story of the Great Dwarf versus the Great Destroyer was written in an ancient dwarven tome known as the Tome of the Rubicon. And long before we even dealt with all this story in Eye of the North, back when the game very first came out in Prophecies, there was a little bit of bonus content added, some of the first content that was ever added to Guild Wars 1. So think of like Guild Wars 1's version of South Sun, okay? In this, you could do kind of an endgamey mission where a bunch of Stone Summit, who were evil xenophobic dwarves basically, were trying to use the Tome of the Rubicon to summon the Great Destroyer early, if you will, okay? And so that was our first experience of the book. Then in Guild Wars 2, it's been referenced many times. We found like a translated and copied and altered version of it during the Guild Wars 2 personal story. Anyway, so to go to this is High Priest Alcar, who was one of the NPCs in the first game during this South Sun style update, who was hoping to recover the tome, and we helped him recover it. And this is what he wrote about it after that happened. High Priest Alcar of the Deljamor Dwarves explains in a letter why the tome that he's recovered must be secured beyond the reach of any. Read on. I have just rescued, he says, with the help of a heroic human, that's us, the player character from the previous game, the Tome of the Rubicon from the Stone Summit. The idiots were attempting to read from it and summon the Great Destroyer. I have translated it in portions, but the ancient language is difficult to understand. So even though High Priest Alcar himself was a dwarf, he's reading an ancient dwarven tome and he can even barely understand it. He says, I do believe there is a prophecy here, however, one that mentions the Deljamor line. Once the translation is complete, I will secure the tome until such a time as it is needed. Fear not, it will not fall into ignorant hands again. It's the last thing he wrote, and then it says on the back is written in a different hand that the tome was never recovered. Now, we did recover a tome in the personal story, but the idea, I believe, is supposed to be that it's like a slightly altered, it's a different version, it's not the original. And Alcar, whatever he did, he sealed it away correctly. And we've not seen it since. Here's a book on the Bloodstones, very relevant for current story. What are Bloodstones? From notes taken by a young Nicholas Sandford in discussion with his friend, historic figure Dermond, a renowned historian. Both of these characters were people we could meet in Guild Wars 1. You can see this is a huge theme of this library. Nicholas Sandford also was kind of an interesting mechanic in the game, where every week he would be hiding in a different area of the world, and the players would have to go out and find where he was. He could be anywhere on Tyria. And when you found him, each week he was also looking for a different collectible trash junk item, and if you traded him enough, he'd give you these gifts that had really unique, rare rewards. Much loved character. And of course Dermond as well, founder of the Dermond Priory, shortly after the events of Guild Wars 1. Read on. Last time the Elder Dragons awoke, seers put magic in a stone to save it from dragons. This worked. After dragons went back to sleep, gods came and hoarded bloodstone and other treasures in Ara. Abaddon, the god of water and secrets, gave the stone away to some races. This caused wars, because people fought over it. King Doric begged that it be taken back so battles for power would end. Here we do get something new, and we've always known in the story that Abaddon used the Bloodstones to give the magic to the races, right? But we never really knew what that process was. What, did he just magically tap into it and spill it out among people? What was that? Well, no, now we hear that that was physically giving the stone to some races, right? That's what he did. So King Doric begged that it be taken back so the battles for power would end. The gods agreed. They used Doric's blood to seal the stone. Blood and stone, this is how we get its name, of the Bloodstone. And they broke it into 5 pieces. They then threw them in a big volcano. Of course, it erupted and spewed them out. People found them and used them for evil. Like the Massat, not all of them have been found. Bloodstones affect an area, healing and cursing, for example. So this is a reference to in the first game when you were fighting battles over the Bloodstones, they would have various effects on the game's mechanics. So like if someone died in range, I believe usually it would have some kind of special effect. The 4 Bloodstones, the 5th was a key, whatever that means, have properties: aggression, destruction, preservation, and denial. Magic flows from the Bloodstones back into the world. Bloodstone shards are rare, but still known to affect anyone or anything within range. Bloodstone dust is far less effective. Again, what's cool here is maybe we didn't get anything super new, but the fact that the Guild Wars 2 Living World people are reminding us of this old damn lore, this idea of aggression, destruction, preservation, denial, the Keystone. These are old stories. Many of us have become very jaded, thought they would never go back to, and you know, they're referencing them. This is good. So let's have a look now at the Margonite Maliks. Oh, some of these are so good. No one knows who wrote this, but it is an ancient letter to High Priest Zelix, a Forgotten, who led a historic assault on the Margonites, who were demon followers of Abaddon. So for those of you, again, who never played the first game, at the end of Nightfall, there was an elite mission, basically a raid. This was like raid content from Guild Wars 1, where you would go and fight against one of Abaddon's chief servants, commanders, a giant Margonite named Malix, okay? And during this long raid, this long quest, you even killed other really prominent Margonites, like Jadoth, who I mentioned before, okay? The very first Margonite. It was really, really kind of big. And High Priest Zelix was kind of like the quest giver for all this stuff. He was a Forgotten, one of these snake people we have not met in Guild Wars 2, who was interested in cleaning this guy up and reclaiming the realm of Torment for Cormyr, right? And now it's known as the Redeemed Realm. Well, that was a part of that story. So, read on. He says, to be noted, breaching the Ebony Citadel will likely kill you. The Ebony Citadel was a giant fortress in this realm of torment in which Malix was hiding. Malix, the Unyielding, rules the 4 Lords of Anguish, and they will shred you. If they don't get you, Malix will. If you do succeed, Malix will embark on a mission of vengeance from which you are unlikely to escape. If you insist, do not use standard tactics against this demon. They will not work. Good luck. I hope I see you again. So we don't know who wrote this note. Kind of interesting here is this line, don't use standard tactics. The whole design of that raid, if you will, was that there was kind of like a meta in Guild Wars 1, as there is in Guild Wars 2, of what's best. And the mechanics specifically for killing Maliks, at launch at least, were all designed to be completely against the meta. All the standard tactics players were using wouldn't work, right? And so I think that's a nod towards that. Over here, there is one about Shiro Tagachi. This isn't really to do with Alona or anything right here. So this was written by Anonymous. This document is a behind-the-scenes account of Shiro Tagachi's life. Shiro Tagachi was, I guess the book will explain, but he was basically the big bad boss of Guild Wars 1 Factions, which was the second big update to the game. Read on. In the early years, Shiro was a loyal guardsman and hero to the Canthan Emperor. He fell under the influence of a demon fortune teller sent by an ancient being named Abaddon. Shiro turned on his own ruler, slaying him, and was killed in the ensuing battle. His death wail unleashed all the magic he'd stolen and been gifted in what has come to be called the Jade Wind. So this was an event that petrified large swathes of countryside. The Jade Wind turned the Jade Sea into solid jade, encasing all of its creatures forever, and had many other terrible repercussions. Later on in this video, in another area of the library, we'll actually see one of the artifacts that the Priory have recovered is some of this jade. We'll read them. Shiro returned as a vengeful spirit, leading an army of magical constructs known as Shiroken. He attacked Cantha, but was eventually defeated and cast into the Realm of Torment. Once more, he returned to fight as Abaddon's general, ruler of the Realm of Torment. Only with great difficulty were the heroes of Tyria able to defeat him that time. He has not been seen since. What I quite liked about this book was it references this fact that Shiro was again seen in the Nightfall story. So after he died, he went to the worst plane of existence possible, right? Which was the Realm of Torment, which at that time Abaddon had sort of taken over and made his own. And because he had died in service to Abaddon, Abaddon said, fine, you will be treated like a hero here in this realm. And so when we, the players, went into this realm later, we had to fight Shiro a second time. They actually had an encounter there, in case you guys don't know, where you fight the final boss of the first story and the final boss of the second story, both at the exact same time when you go into the Realm of Torment, and that's kind of what that deal is. This is Simon's History of Ascalon. This, once again, has been referenced in the series before and is one of the Ascended back pieces in the game. This book, written by a royal scribe, has become one of the most beloved volumes in classrooms across Tyria. It's a revealing historical and cultural work, including various notes Simon could not resist putting into it. His ability to analyze a political conflict and diplomatic maneuvering was unparalleled. The book includes coverage of the war between Ascalon and Kryta in great deal with an insightful commentary and evaluation. So this, of course, is talking about the Guild Wars. Down here, there's another book called Stone Summit Siege Weaponry. These appear to be hand-drawn plans for a siege weapon. The note on the first page states that they are original drawings done by Stone Summit dwarves. A brief historical passage reveals that the Stone Summit dwarves once enslaved the Dredge until overthrown. After, they warred with the Deljamor dwarves and lost, they scattered and disappeared. Interesting, because many Stone Summit, of course, it's kind of ambiguous how many of them turned to stone to become the Great Dwarf, how many of them just fled. An interesting story, I remember pre-launch, like a long time pre-launch, okay? There was a screenshot that came out of, I believe it was Timberline Falls, or maybe it was Lornar's Pass in the game, and it showed a bunch of dynamic events, early development dynamic events for Guild Wars 2, and one of them mentioned a great Stone Summit weapon, and that event never ended up in the Ultimate game. But yeah. Now this one here, the Tome of the Five True Gods, is really interesting, but if we press F and have a look at it ourselves, you'll see it simply says that this is a placeholder book left to indicate that the Tome of the Five True Gods is currently unavailable due to ongoing translation efforts. This has actually got a fair amount to do with this patch's core Living World story. They've introduced to us this new idea of this tome that was written by the Five True Gods. As we speak to a scholar in a second, we'll learn a bit more. But this thing in the background over here, where we've got the letters right on top of this thing, how do we know the names of any of the Elder Dragons? How do we know about the S? Well, this information came from the tome, but it's not fully translated. As I say, we'll see a bit more about that on the scholars in a second. But yeah, really, really significant book, and we can't read it just yet. Next, let's have a look at this one. Oh my god, the Map of the All. This one's crazy, this story. Okay, here we go. This is where it's going to start getting interesting. If you're not mistaken, this ancient tome was written by someone known as the Apostate. It appears to describe something similar to what you saw in your vision of the eternal alchemy. This is another interpretation of the world. The apostate was a Margonite, so a follower of Abaddon, who we met in Guild Wars 1 when we went to the Realm of Torment. So he was in this afterlife, he was in this other dimension, he was in the Realm of Torment, and he was a Margonite, so in theory he should have been against us, right? But he wasn't. He was one of only two Margonites we have ever met that actually had turned his back on Abaddon. So he still had the power Abaddon had given him, but he had gone rogue. He had decided that Abaddon wasn't right, okay? And so that led us to be on his side. I'm going to read you guys some quest text from the apostate back in the first game. He says to you when you meet him, "If you would indulge me, I would proffer a trade, my knowledge for your protection. I've turned from Abaddon's path due to certain knowledge that I have acquired. Because of this, I've become hated among my old allies, and even now I am hunted. Travel is nigh impossible, yet I must return to my writings, as they are all I have left in this place. Please help me through the domain of fear," and then the sort of the generic quest dialogue. So back in the first game, he said he'd found some information that had turned him away from Abaddon, and now this is the answer. Okay, so he's writing about something he calls the All. The author calls it the Antikytheria, describing it as a cosmic mechanism made of many parts, all spinning around a central body known in the ancient Crichton as Thyria. So there's Antikytheria, and then the ancient tongue is calling Tyria Thyria, like with a H there. Very interesting, okay? Read on. 6 large bodies orbit the world, existing in primal symbiosis. The energies move with the push and pull of positive and negative, ever in motion. Kind of airy words, but describing what we're seeing, right? The apostate says one thing that is especially troubling. He says, should the energies become imbalanced, the world will tilt and all beings will fall off it into the void. It's probably a metaphor. I love that last line. It's probably a metaphor. What are you talking about? What if he's right? What if it's not a metaphor? Oh my god, that would be insane. Okay, so after that we've got the evening song. This one's pretty light reading. Have a look. These are collected poems about Nightfall, compiled by Meloni. So this was the wife of the guy who wrote Kos on Kos, another hero, good friend of ours in the previous game. When the undead arise and the old women cry, the Sunspears fight to shut down the inevitable fall of night. Varesh's troop need a cart full of pain. With Cormyr to lead, the Sunspears will never complain. Varesh was a wartime leader of the Cornins, and she was working as an agent of Abaddon, basically. She'd been corrupted by this thought of Abaddon. She wanted to help him in Nightfall. And this is why ultimately we had to go to war to stop it from happening, right? It was the Sunspears versus the Cornins. And then there was a third nation, the Vabians, who tried to stay out. Crossing the desolation to face Joko himself, we all tremble a little and make haste over the continental shelf. Here we're talking about the fact that we were chasing down Palawa Joko, who we inadvertently released from his prison, and is basically the main antagonist, is now the tyrannical ruler of Elona in the present day, 250 years later. Nightfall was such a good story. There was so much going on there. Through devastation and torment, we see Cormyr rise, and after an extensive effort, Abaddon dies. Alright, so with the evening song done, I think we're pretty much done with this section, right? I don't think I missed any at all. And this section's a little bit more dense than the other one, so... I mean, the tour will take some time, but I mean, that was probably one of the longest sections we'll end up doing. If the editing has seemed a little bit weird as well, by the way, basically I recorded 40 minutes, maybe more, and then realized, because I'm messing around with capture settings and stuff at the moment, it all got ruined and I had to redo it. But I liked the old commentary, so I've like blended the two together. It's been kind of crazy. Alright, so with the first section done, 2 scholars spoken to, I think I'll leave this one here only because it's been so crazy. I was more than happy to do an hour-plus long tour for you guys on release day, but this has already been kind of crazy and I've got to do other videos anyway. So I will continue this later in the week. We'll have part 2 with the rest of the tour. Hope you guys have enjoyed this so far. It is a fascinating place. We haven't even seen the half of it so far, but tell me what you think about like what we learned in the All there. Antikytheria, an old word for Tyria, Thyria. Crazy stuff. There's more to see. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.